trailers that you'll see that have backwards clippings and things like that. So we thought it was something that our trailer could potentially be known for. And it's a style of
added to the elements of surrealism, because it's like the awkwardness, and like obviously it was unknown to the audience at the time, but it just worked together to make it more surreal.
I think it also sort of helped to cover up any like slight imperfections within the filming or the action on the screen.
Good. Right, so yeah, talking again about the backwards, it was heavily inspired by the Dead Island trailer, because about half the trailer's done in reverse. There was some noticeable bits of backwards in our trailer, some bits not, like the tap dripping upwards. I mean, I wouldn't have noticed it if I had done it. But I also like the sound it gives off. I mean, it's quite jarring, it's quite disorientating, it's very odd, especially on the last shot, which, I mean, we didn't plan this, but it was the sound of children's laugh like playing in the hall, and we managed to capture it on the camera, and when you played it backwards, it sounds really creepy. So, yeah, so does anybody backwards? Do you want to talk about the sound?
Yeah, well,
Because you did the back. Okay.
oh
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, so when it came down to the final cut, I worked out that nothing was really fitting together, which really annoyed me, but I had to rethink all the footage, past and present, and work out how I could rearrange the footage in a way that flowed. Because I mean, at the moment it didn't flow, it didn't really seem to work together. I came down to the conclusion that we had to remove the graveyard scene, and then actually when I did, it made everything fall into place, and I was a lot happier with it. The graveyard scene was just a bit, I mean, we spent a lot of time on it, but it wasn't really working, and I think everybody knew it wasn't working, so it was kind of like the weak link, so once I took that out, it looked pretty good. I added the bathtub scene because we had to sacrifice the graveyard shot. I think it made for a good opening. I think it set at a good pace for the rest of the trailer, and I think it was something to work on. And the extra scenes are linked up. Some of the problems that occurred, we had those technical difficulties at the beginning, which was like a problem with conversion and getting the footage on the camera, off the camera onto the computer, and the software problems that we had. And I mean, it was quite annoying as the editor, because I wanted to get it done whilst we were filming, and it just speeded up the process a lot, because it was kind of taking ages to get anything done in the editing field. So we had to go down to the IT guys, get them to. It was just really long, and I just didn't like doing it like that. The problem with the graveyard scene, again, lighting in the graveyard, sound in the graveyard shots. The graveyard was pretty bad in the actual shot. I mean, it wasn't very scary. It was just a big, flat, open piece of land. It didn't really work. I mean, at night it looked better, but at day it was still pretty crap. Anybody want to touch on any problems there?
I think the locations is really touched on that.
Right. Theory.
We looked at, throughout the whole process, we looked at a lot of theories and seeing like what worked and why it would be included and things like that. And we decided to use montage within our trailer because of a guy called Sova Einstein that said that montage is a conflict. And because our tempo and narrative arc of our trailer needed to be speeded up, we thought that the montage was quite conventional, and it was something that we wanted to explore because it would help us have a lot of shots in there that were quite scary, but they didn't necessarily need to make sense. So, because this was something that was going to happen throughout the film, so that was something that we looked into and then doing. We looked at Laura Mulvey because it was quite conventional having female.
Laura Mulvey says how the view of the camera comes from the perspective of a male, and we thought this was quite relevant as most of the victims in the trailer are female, so therefore the male antagonist is asserting his dominance over the female by killing them. But we kind of broke conventions with this, with the killing of as you can see in the trailer, of an older male victim. So yeah, that's how it's relevant to our trailer.
And then through music, we looked at a guy called Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, and he developed the genres of minimalism and surrealism And because our music, we wanted it to be quite surreal and things like that. That was something that we looked at because we had non-diegetic and diegetic sounds, and me and Zoe did some voice recordings of screams and things like that that we wanted to go in there, that we thought would work quite effectively with the violins and things like that. One way that we kind of conformed to conventions were the use of intertitles, again because of the whole audience feedback saying there wasn't enough narrative. We decided to put intertitles within our trailer because we thought that was one way of, it didn't mean that we needed to shoot more footage and we would still be able to put across the narrative, so it just meant that we needed to think of a few words that would work quite effectively with our trailer. So again, we had to do more research and look into other trailers and how they use intertitles and whether we wanted to include rhetorical questions in ours or how we wanted to do that. We developed conventions through the motifs, so like the backward recording. No, that was that challenging, I'd say.
That'll be challenging.
Yeah, we challenged it through the backwards recording, and I would say we developed conventions through the use of masks, because that's something that's been done in a lot of films, but we tried.
Freddy Krueger. Was it Freddy Krueger? Not so. Jason. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So again, we saw how they use these crops and seeing like how we could do it differently in a way that works with our narrative, and because we found it quite effective for our preliminary task, so it meant that it would put less focus on Josh's acting skills, because I think the sense of unknown is scary in itself, so it was something that we wanted to incorporate.
One thing also I want to say about conventions is that the fact that females nowadays are seen to be more stronger as well in films, as they don't need like a man to protect them and come and save them. That was something like in Nightmare on Elm Street, something you'll see then, but then now we kind of brought it back because Muna, she's a female obviously, she gets attacked by a male, and also the fact that it wasn't just a female that got attacked, it was also a male, Mr. Grey, who gets attacked. So I think in a way we're challenging it and conforming it, I think, in words.
Yeah, and another way we conform to the conventions of the trailer is the way we juxtapose kind of normality versus the subconscious self, which is Josh being crazy, and also juxtapose the unknown versus the unknown, with us not knowing his depths, but what am I talking about? Yeah, us not know, the audience not knowing his depths, like to the extent that he would go to kill his victims, and obviously his mind.
I think you captured that when he takes the mask off, don't you?
Yeah.
That moment is quite important, really.
The use of like the high and the low angle, like reverse shots, that kind of shows like the battle of his mind and how he was confused. So it kind of makes us think, oh, is he crazy, or like why is he doing that? So I think that's like another reason the audience might want to go watch our trailer. Throughout the whole project, I think as a group we learned how important time management was, because at times we faced a lot of drawbacks and things that we weren't expecting. So although we were kind of able to fall back on our actual research and our, what were they called? Our storyboards that we did and things like that, I think if we had more time and I don't know, if we could foresee things that we would have done, I think just putting more effort and making sure none of that actually happens.
And the thing is, we were constantly banging on about our time management, but we didn't really listen. So I think if we were listened better and organised our workload properly amongst ourselves, then we would have, our trailer could be more successful than it already is.
I think because some things didn't work towards the end, I think we worked quite effectively as a group, as in like trying to get them reshot and giving up like our lunch or whenever, trying to see who has free periods and when that could be reshot, and just make it work and put it together and things like that.
I think sort of an important thing when we were trying to do the time management was because we had to sort of book out locations to film as well, because like we use quite a lot of stuff in the hall and that's often like occupied, so it's sort of we had to make sure they knew in advance when we wanted to film in that area.
that's me. Like it says up there, throughout the course of the project, my role has changed. Like at first, I was assigned the role of costume and props manager, or aesthetics manager.
That's a good.
As I do drama, and I just finished a unit in directing a play, I had like some experience in directing and like different roles, but that's for like obviously stage and not film. So it was nice to see like to have a different perspective on it,
I think we included this as well to show how we needed to like adapt to different roles. It wasn't necessarily whose role was who and this is my role, I'm going to stick to it. It was more about helping one another and just making the whole process much easier so that we could all get an effective outcome, because at the end of the day we all had the same intentions to produce a really effective trailer. So it was more of just helping each other out and learning new skills along the way.
Yeah.
Music.
Yeah, I was in charge of the music, so I used sort of one main program, which is Logic, which is like a sort of computer editing music software. So there's lots of like MIDI sounds which you can control on the keyboard, but it creates like sounds of, like you can do piano obviously, and then you can do all sorts of sounds. So I did that, but then I recorded the violin on the keyboard. I felt that it didn't really have an effective sound because it is electronically controlled, it doesn't have so much emotion. So I then had someone record in the actual violin part live, which I felt sort of gave it much more like, well, realistic sound, because it's real. But also, what's good about that program is once we had the final edit of the video, I can then insert that into Logic, which means I can exactly time code the music with the images. So an example of that is when like the masked figure like flashes up on the screen, I could add in the sound effect for that. So that's sort of the main program I used. There's sort of the inspiration here, which I've just got a little like the audio soundtrack from it. So I don't know if you want to have a listen to that.
Which